So, right now, Pokemon Company and WB are kind of mum about any follow-ups, but what the heck. It's now or never, and this one's gonna be for me. Hello, and welcome to another installment of my Pokémondays 25 series. And given how today marks 2 years since release, I guess you might say, this is like my follow-up to further elaborate about why I believe that Pokemon Detective Pikachu works as a live-action Pokemon adaptation. While the choice initially raised eyebrows to adapt a little-known spin-off game rather than the main games of the anime, I I believe that decision ultimately was one that was for the best, and I'm going to explain why in this video, so let's get started. So, both the game and the film have the same basic story and setup, which, albeit they push different ways, but the one concept between them is this. A story also on Tim Goodman, who was a young man who's come to Rhyme City to search for his father, Harry, who was has who went missing and was presumed dead 2 months prior to the events of the story. And forming an unlikely bond with a talking Pikachu, who the two set out to find the truth of what happened and as well as unravel a greater mystery, which definitely poses a great threat to Rhyme City and the great Pokemon world. So, I mean, this as a basic level is a much easier storyline to comprehend and than how convoluted other adaptations of Japanese IPs have been. And since I think this is actually he was the best route that could have taken, and in many ways, and a special universe that is ripe enough to experiment with over the past quarter century, which I think would make a good time to bring me to my next point in this video. So, the changes made in the story are actually he sometimes point of contention, but I believe for the context of the film, compared to other ones, again, they make sense, such as making Tim an adult rather than like a teenager like in the game, and also combining other characters into who who different ones like for example, oh, Lucy Stevens, so basically Catherine Newton's character, as I pointed out before, is essentially a combination of Amelia and Mako, who from the game, he basically serving the same role, all combining in Mako's investigative reporting skills with Amelia's spunk, so to speak, and likewise, as well, Lieutenant Hideyoshida, maybe another character that's unique to the film. He essentially fills the same role as combining a Mike Baker and Inspector Holiday from the game. Um, Effectively filling the same role as one of Harry's former colleagues, as well as acting as one of Tim's mentors, as well as surrogate father figure. I'm super idiot. I mean, so, and I've mentioned this before also. Given how Watanabe and other movies helped train Batman, helped find Godzilla, and also helped incept people, so he's more than qualified for the role, man. Well, and even and Tim himself isn't too jarring at all, given how the character was designed to be ambiguous in background, and in the game, and and given how Smith is of mixed background, it's not a big deal, and they don't have to make it one. And and also the tone definitely is a big change, given how it's arguably the one of the darker adaptations they've done, on which definitely is in tune with some of the earlier movies, and a lot of them as a whole, and especially more recent ones, which seem to be going for more or kind of old ages kind of story in the vein of something like Star Wars or Marvel Cinematic Universe, which definitely would also make a good transition into my next point for this review. Yeah, this video. Admittedly, adapting any previously a, a normally 2D work into live action on 3 dimensions is often a big risk in of itself. I mean, since in fact, I mean, it comes in multiple flavors. I mean, whereas I'll definitely be addressing this more with the coming Space Jam sequel, but it's definitely a process that's difficult to get right and easy to screw up, as has been noted with the initial whole 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 backlash to the Michael Bay Transformers, as well as the kind of juiced looking Ninja Turtles and the reboots he produced as well. Hell, since I mean, I think, but I wasn't quite going that far when I found out they're going to be going with realistic designs in this movie. I was expecting something in the neighborhood of like Pokken Tournament or Super Smash Brothers and how they handle the Pokemon in 3D and different style in the main games, but they went all out with it, and I'm actually really glad they did. I mean, and even if the if the if some of the changes are a bit off-putting, they actually went all in on the weirdness, and it's in the case like Mr. Mime and Lickitung on man. Also, that scene in the beginning on the train, he actually takes it pretty well, just casually drying himself off there. Yeah, they're actually fully committed. I mean, and even if it's something I'm used to, I can definitely tell them like saying like that's a Jigglypuff, that's a Graveler, that's a Trico, that's a Pancham with a Pangoro there. So which definitely is a vast improvement over turning like the Goombas and Mario Discount Stormtroopers, hers, and whatever they did for those terrible Resident Evil films. Fingers crossed about how the reboot later this year here, but still. Oh, and in fact, one of the simplest things is not just like the how well the visual effects blend in the world and how they built the world itself. So many little details I'm still noticing on repeat viewings. I mean, in fact, the most recent one I've done that I'm in the middle of to do this video, I just now noticed that all the shots in the movie we are done in a perspective that could only be seen by the Pokemon or by their partners. I mean, it's really a simple and effective detail that I just really love. I mean, especially given how they got a lot of people that have really experiences such things, such as production designer Nigel Phelps, as well as Academy Award nominated and cinematographer her whose credits include Logan and Gladiator, and his work, especially in the roundhouse fight scene, is quite impressive. And definitely, I think John Matheson did a fantastic job here. And on that note, the audio presentation also suits this. I think it's such a nice compromise how some Pokemon say their names in the anime, others have arranged with their cries in the games. And one also definitely one scene that works in Hub's Best Essential Assist, one just mentioned, the beatboxing Mildred. I laugh so hard at that every single time. And as for the Diplo cameo, who as a DJ slash fight MC, I think it's Paul. I'm seeing like the virtual Post Malone concert. I think it's probably gonna remember the same way. Hey, the campy OST from the early movies is nowadays, man. Hey, and all things considered, and just also has some elements in her from even Toku as well, where the even though the Pokemon may be CG, a lot of the attacks they're trying to evade are completely real. Which definitely, even just something subtle details like the weight of each monster, like that scene when they're investigating PCL labs. Newton admitted like the back pictures were actually weighted the same way that Psyduck actually would in Pokedex. I mean, if any further entries are made, I like they kept up this attention to detail. Much like I have the other points addressed in this video. Yep. This connects to the other points I've made, but it's definitely something a lot of video game adaptations have a problem with about trying to choose the right cast and material. I mean, it's not just as to who the names are and where they come from, but how they fit for that role. But in a weird way, all the people they've chosen here seem to fit into the world they've built in an highly effective fashion, whether they're already established in one continuity or another, or if they're created specifically for that purpose. Because it definitely helps suit the story, which at its core, rather than being like an action adventure or film right away, it is in essence a neo-noir detective story, which just happened to be set in the Pokemon world. Which is definitely like I noticed a lot of adaptations have done this, and in order to distinguish themselves, man, it's no different than and say, hey, how the same year's Joker, and that intriguing me by making a more essentially less of like straight superhero film and more of a neo noir or psychological crime thriller, which hadn't been set in DC Universe. But getting ahead of myself, they've been getting better at this by with how they also made like last year's Sonic movie essentially like a road trip comedy had a with a science fiction flavor to it, and the more comedy, much like its senior, is at its core a martial arts tournament film with some fantasy elements to it, which if you haven't played all the games, a viewer could understand and enjoy. So I still remember each of the times I went to go hear this. I am glad to have done that. And opening day, I was one of at least 20 people in the audience, and when when we were leaving, one of the people in there said, I never understood the Pokemon thing before, but I do now," which I think is what they were trying to get across there. I mean, I'm actually kind of glad they did this because you need to lay down the foundations of what you're doing before you dive into everything else. Because Marvel didn't go right to adapting the Avengers, they made sure we understood how the version of Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and the Incredible Hulk operated. And then now, how that more follow ups have been made that have a leeway to not just with big names like Spider Man, but also ones that haven't been adapted as much like Shang-Chi, The Eternals, and the Black Widow movie. And using that parallel, also how it helps that even and though it's definitely a trick. I mean, a lot of these other comic movies don't have original stories ever been done. They pick the ones that work best with the material and they focus on that. I mean, kind of like how even like another example, as I've said, like the 86 Transformers or the 1990 TMNT film took the best elements of the source and they basically just left the rest. I mean, I mean, it can be bear in mind for all the ballyhoo people often like to say about the superhero movie obsession the industry has. It still took a while to even get it going again, and because there are actually a lot more or less successful films than successful ones. The initial waves, I mean, as you might think, given how it took Blade to be popularized and critically in 1998, X-Men to do it among fans in 2000, and Spider-Man 2002 to do it with everyone else. So, and hopefully we'll keep we'll eventually get ones where the bad films are the exception rather than the rule and not the other way around. And this film definitely has, with my next point, an ideal way to do it. This is definitely a key point, means that I'm glad this movie helped establish to honor the material as a whole, even if they just adapted one specific game. And I think I'm also glad they set the adaptation the same fictional universe as all the other material, which is definitely something I'm glad to see more recent series are openly willing to embrace their legacy and work it in there. I mean, and not specific parts of it, contrary to popular belief, but it's the bulk of it over the last quarter of a century. He and given how it's actually rife with Easter eggs to who the games and the anime. So in many ways, this is kind of like another movie that I wish Ready Player One could have been, and but I actually ended up finding much more enjoyable, well because it actually embraced at least what made it unique. I mean, and even something as simple as the Pokemon Trainer cameo. I like how Rob very consciously he did not explicitly state whether or not it was Ash or Red taking the field to a point where he's even credited as being a Pokemon trainer, kind of like a Smash Brothers. And also the big action scene in the finale. He definitely even has something subtle like Poke floats. I mean, and I think this definitely has the right approach, and of course, it's definitely a darker adaptation tonally, but it still knows how over the top it can be and still how to have fun, which edges it out over for one such as Infamous Pokemon Apocalypse, which meant to parody the whole Michael Bay Zack Snyder style adaptation and and being overly dark, but most people just took it at face value. To which I initially made a video a decade ago by the matter like don't go looking for it, it's not there anymore. Or someone tried to tell me just one person's vision. Well, I found that vision to be too much to bear. This one, however, uses like its presentation, tone, and the source and puts the dark spin out in the correct way. As my associate Pan once said, there's edgy on purpose and there's edgy for purpose. And I will say this, as mean, even if if it doesn't explicitly he set up any follow-ups, it does, however, provide a solid foundation and for other adaptations. And and yes, I mentioned that Inverse interview in another video. Oh, and I also understand and why it's been and so quiet lately, and hence why I'm delaying some other ones I had about such matter until after I hear more. Or that said, and it definitely makes a good blueprint for other live action adaptations, both theatrically as well as on HBO Max. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things you can do in material, and it helps that unlike other countless other video game and anime adaptations that they actually he had the foresight to make this as a self-contained story with a three-act structure, which definitely I submit at both elements give an edge over for Alita Battle Angel. Well, personally, I mean, well, I'm hoping the other ones just mentioned, but still, hell, I like how much like the video game theme they're working on as well. Hell, I know for certain that it's going to be on Switch, and he's going to find his dad differently than he did here. And as for how they'd approach the sequel to the film, maybe they'll shake things up a bit. Maybe they'll have Tim become Pikachu, who instead, but that's just me. He and I've seen this film numerous times, and regardless of how long on this takes me and much longer this concentration lasts, I definitely want to watch it many more times. So, and this is definitely not going to be the only kind of experimental video I'll be doing. I mean, as part of the series, but I'm definitely glad to be sharing this with you all, and I will definitely be talking with you all again soon. So, later.